Hey, before we dive into today's episode, I have a really quick note. Holy Ourselves is made possible by the support of listeners like you. So if you love this podcast, the reflections, the interviews, the resources on faith, sexuality, and formation, you can help sustain it and expand it while also diving deeper into more content by joining the Patreon community. You will get early access to episodes, bonus content, even opportunities to give input. So head over to patreon.com/holy ourselves. It really does make a difference, and I cannot thank you enough. Now, let's head into the episode. All right, well, welcome everyone to the Holy Ourselves podcast, a podcast where we explore the intersection of faith and sexuality and gender and how to follow God in this crazy world. I am so excited about this episode with you all. I have so many beautiful friends here that I have been theorizing about this episode. And some voices might be familiar to you if you've listened to Life on Side B, and others may be new. So I have with me, I'll just go through really quickly. We have Michelle. Michelle, hi.
Hey,
How are you?
I am good. Can I tell you a really fun Lord of the Rings fact?
There we go. Yes. Yeah. Actually, yeah. Why don't we give, as I introduce everyone, you can give a Lord of the Rings fact, or I can give you a different prompt. Go ahead.
So some friends wanted to really embrace the season of fall. So
Okay.
we have been scheduling an outdoor showing of all three Lord of the Rings movies throughout the fall.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
and we have Return of the King coming up this Saturday, and we have Tolkien themed, Middle Earth themed food and drinks,
Yes.
and a fire and a big projector, and everybody gets cozy and we watch the movie outside, and it's been really fun.
Oh my gosh. That's great. That's glorious.
Someone made a cocktail called Orc's Blood or Orc
Yeah.
Juice. What is it? Yeah. And we
my
had rabbit
goodness.
stew,
Okay.
real rabbit.
Wow.
It's been a lot of fun. It's like a whole new level of nerd that I'm really proud of my friends.
You know, for everyone, I think, like I said, Michelle, if you listen to Life on Side B, you may have heard Michelle in an episode or two. But the fun fact, Michelle and our friendship began around Lord of the Rings.
It did.
Yes, because I was your Secret Santa, right?
I'm so thankful.
Yeah, I was your Secret Santa in a group, and you listed, we each had to list out a profile of our likes, and you listed Lord of the Rings, so I bought you a copy of The Fall of Gondolin.
Yep.
Then when that had just come out. So
and that started our friendship.
That started our friendship. So it's perfect that we're here together. And then we also have Johana-Marie Williams. Hello, Johana-Marie.
Hi.
Do you have a fun fact, or do you want me to give you a prompt?
No, I think, well, this is going to build off of Michelle's. So I did a Lord of the Rings, mini Ren fair at a friend's house for my birthday last year.
That's
we
so
did watch,
cool.
We watched Return of the King because that's my favorite one.
Yes.
Did you all dress up?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I sewed a whole outfit. It was delightful. And I made the food that time. If I do it again, we'll do potluck. But it was really fun. And I agree with you about reaching this new level of nerd. There's something about being an adult who can use your free will to make decisions. It's no, we can actually go harder. I can budget for this. I can make a whole plan. We are signed up.
Yes.
So I'm similarly enjoying this stage of life.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, I feel that way. I still have never dressed up for anything with Lord of the Rings. I never have. I know. So maybe this needs to happen with you guys at some point. But I was just actually rewatching. I've never watched a fan edit of The Hobbit ever. And I was just watching that today of fans who've edited The Hobbit. to be more like accurate or like get rid of stuff that's like excessive. And so I was watching it all today. That was like my preparation for our time here. And then we also have our friend Nick. Nick, I'm so glad you're like coming on the We've talked about us doing podcasting for a moment, and now here
We
we are.
have. Yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
excited to be here.
Yeah. We met through my partner Christian, but then we very quickly found our bond of Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we definitely did. I think that when you and I first started talking, you were reading like one of Christopher Tolkien's expansions on the Lord of the Rings. And
Yes.
so when you were reading that next level book, I'm like, oh, we are going to be best friends. This is
We're
going to
gonna
be
be best
amazing.
friends. Yes. Well, Michelle was mentioning this before, so might as well dive into it. How many times have each of you read the books, or what books have you read?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm a bit of a rare bird in that I've read Lord of the Rings twice, but
Okay.
Silmarillion I've read 5 times, I think. So
Oh,
I lean much heavier on the Silmarillion side of things than on the Lord of the Rings side of things, but I love them both, you know.
okay. That is props for reading Silmarillion more than Lord of the Rings.
So Johana-Marie's not, she said she's not a rereader, but I bet you watched the movies many times.
Yeah, so I've also read it twice. I'm working through the Silmarillion. I know a lot of so here's the type of fan I am. I read it, I've watched the movie several times, but really I'm a fanfic girly. So I'm getting online, I'm reading the lore, I'm reading people's interpretations, going back and researching what they're saying and that kind of thing. So that's really where I live in the fan space.
Yes.
The Lord of the Rings fan space. So yeah.
That makes sense from what I know of you and your love for fanfic. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yes. Michelle, what about you?
Since I discovered it, I would say like every 5 or so years I've reread it. And it's just very like calming, regulating to go back to it. I just think it's full of like breathtaking sentences and writing.
Yeah.
Even when he's describing like an orc battle, it'll be like, oh, that's like a beautiful image, but it's it's like talking about evil orcs or whatever. But I think I'm on my 4th time.
Okay.
Just kind of cycle through, and it's also a movie that I like to just have on in the background a lot, or I'll play like the ambient world soundtrack of it.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, it means a lot to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a tradition that anytime a new like film or now show of Lord of the Rings comes out, I rewatch all of the previous things in order. So like as the movies were coming out, every time before it would come out, we'd watch a new one or we'd rewatch them. And my cousins and I would do them together. And then when The Hobbit came out, and then as The Rings of Power has come out, I still do that. I will go through all of the seasons so far, plus the movies, Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. And then now the War of the Rohirrim just came out, which I am obsessed with.
It's
obsessed
so good.
What streaming service is it on?
I think it's on HBO.
HBO, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. It is so amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, great. So I do that. I think I've technically read the book. I actually have it with me right now. Right here, my like favorite copy of it. I think I've read it 7 or 8 times. But that was like a lot in high school and college when I had the ability to, and I would like read it almost once a year. It's been a moment since I've read it, and I've been thinking I need to like go back through again and
yes, you
do it again. But I've read this Silmarillion twice, I think, but it's a hard one. I need that like glossary in the back.
I've started it twice and I've never finished it.
It's difficult. Yeah.
It
It is
is. It
not the
definitely
easiest.
is. And I've found the key for me is notes. Like I need to take notes
Mm,
while I'm reading it, and then I can follow it a lot easier than when I don't.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So, all right. I got this whole idea for this episode because I was watching a reel, and I'll try and find who it was I was listening to. But there was a queer advocate who was talking about the ways that our perspective of death actually impacts how we live. And it was a really intriguing thing. And like, so often we're running from death and we do all of the things in our life about death. And how that changes stuff. And I know that that's been a big theme in Lord of the Rings. If you didn't know it as a listener, please, it's definitely is, of how each race and each character, their perspective about death, about eternity, about all of these different things impact how they do. So then it gave me this idea because I was hearing it from a queer advocate. I was like, oh my God, y'all, we got to talk about this stuff. We got to just do it. So that's
Yeah.
why we're all here. And since we're going to be talking about spirituality and sexuality, one other intro question I want all of you to give is which Lord of the Rings character do you believe gives off the most queer energy?
Oh. This is
Go ahead,
hard
Okay.
because I feel like there's several, right? I mean, I feel like number one is Sam and Frodo. That's where we're gonna go first.
Yeah.
There's
Mhm.
also, I think, Galadriel. Her name meaning man maiden, and she's giving up. Then she's talked about, I think specifically in the Silmarillion, with this strength of energy that
Mm.
kind of that I don't know. It feels queer to me. And then there's the dwarves. Period. Like everybody. I don't
The
know.
dwarves.
So that's a lot to pick from.
I know with the dwarves, it's like, do they even have women? Who knows? They're fine.
Well,
I don't know.
I think they joke about that, and Gimli says something like, "You wouldn't know because it's actually hard to tell us apart,
Distinguish them.
the
Yes.
male and female dwarfs."
And I'm
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
I actually
mhm.
was listening to something the other day, and they were like, "What if Gimli actually was a female dwarf?" Like, that's a mind blower just conceptually all by itself,
That really changes the fanfic of Legolas and Gimli. I'm just
right?
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the fact that there's no females in the Fellowship.
hmm
Mm,
Oh, yes.
I like-
Mhm.
Yeah,
mhm.
that is very true. Definitely.
Yeah. I would also say Gandalf definitely gives off queer vibes.
Mhm.
I mean,
The Ian McKellen version, or do we think it's even just in the book you get that?
That's a very good question. I mean, Ian McKellen obviously does, and it's because the actor is gay.
Right.
I just think, yeah, there's something, and probably it's something to the solitary aspect of his character, and the way that he engages, like his obsession with hobbits, and I think in just the kind of like diverting from the normal narrative. But I'd have to reread Lord of the Rings as the book with that kind of thing, because yeah, it does naturally come up because of Ian McKellen playing Gandalf. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like this is quasi joking, but also quasi not joking. Smeagol and Deagle, their relationship.
Oh, I forgot
Okay.
about them.
Toxic
Yes.
besties.
Yeah. Well, and
Were we or weren't we?
right,
Mhm.
exactly. And they're the only characters, I think, in the entire thing that refer to each other as my love, which I think is super
Mm.
interesting.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
And also, Smeagol, like, he's cast out from society, and he's like, fine, I'm just going to make it on my own for the next 500 years. And I feel like that's a very queer energy sort of thing as well. Of like, when we're cast out, we're still going to thrive. We're still going to figure it out
You're
and
just
make
gonna
it
go
happen,
there.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we're gonna talk about like a little bit later about the sexuality aspect of it, but it really is interesting how much you could read like queer queerness into the characters of Lord of the Rings. And I've always wondered like how much of that is just the distance between our context and Tolkien's, or like what does that end up looking like? Because you can see it in so many different places constantly.
Yes, definitely.
Were you going to say
I would
something, Johana-Marie?
agree. No, I agree. Like even comparing him to a contemporary like Lewis, whom I love. Honestly, as a fantasy reader, I'm a child first of chaotic bisexual Hans Christian Andersen and
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis, who had some other fun aspects to him. Um, I just don't see that queerness in Lewis's characters the way I see it all throughout Lord of the Rings. It just feels
Yes.
like there's something other. The
Hmm.
otherness
Yeah. Which is
foments that.
actually really funny because if you look at their lives, C.S. Lewis definitely lived the more like obscurely non-traditional life than Tolkien did. Tolkien was married, was like a very good Catholic, didn't get divorced or anything, like just kind of lived the life. And then C.S. Lewis is over here living with what's his name's mom. We don't know their relationship, what's
Yeah,
happening, all
yeah.
of the different things, like just very much non-traditional. And yet I would totally agree with that. Yeah. So, okay. So then we're going to get more into sexuality, but in spirituality, if you had to tease out the core spiritual themes of Lord of the Rings, what would you say those core themes are?
Um, yeah, I think death, like you were saying, is going to be the core spiritual thing. And to me, this speaks more into the Silmarillion, I think, than Lord of the Rings, but they're all tied together, right?
Yeah.
So what's barely mentioned in Lord of the Rings is Iluvatar, which is the one true God. Um, but really, I think that men and elves specifically, elves are jealous of men because men get to, in the afterlife, join Iluvatar. And so therefore they can have a more intimate relationship with God. And men are
Hmm.
jealous of elves because elves get to live forever and be their own gods, essentially. And so there's this sort of back and forth of divinity between the two of them, and a want to be um
For
enamored
what the other
by
has.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, with what the other
Yeah.
has, and it's really the crux of the just messiness between the two of them and why their relationships are so broken. um
Mm,
so and that's kind of where I see that
yeah.
spirituality really seeping in to these stories.
I think that like this is honestly within the spiritual themes, this is one of the areas where I feel like the movies and the books divert a lot, or at least like the context of the books sometimes you have. Because I'm one of the areas that I'm saddest that never made it into the movies is, gosh, I'm gonna forget his name, but there's the character of Gondor that like Pippin befriends, and when he's in Minas
Mm,
Tirith,
mm,
I can't remember his name. And the whole thing is everyone thinks Pippin is a child because they don't have any children left. Because it's both because of the war, but then there's also this concept of that like humans are so enamored in trying to figure out immortality that they're less like focused on children, that Pippin is such like this unique person in the city of Minas Tirith because there's no children, so they keep getting him mixed up of what he is. But I think that plays into the ideas of like death, and there's a lot of these kinds of themes and nuanced things that happen in the books that like just don't, just granted you can't fit everything in, um that end up happening like what you're talking about, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, there's the like you have to kill the darlings, as it were, sort of idea with movie dialogue.
Yeah. Michelle, Johana-Marie, any thoughts?
Yeah, and it ties to one of your questions, what first drew you to Lord of the Rings? I actually
Yes.
discovered it in college when The Two Towers came out in the movies, and like I had a new group of Christian friends, and they wanted to see it. Um, So I started there and then like went backwards. But it was around the same time that I was really developing as like a new Christian. So I was very drawn in to the epic journey aspect and the idea of taking on a mission and like commitment to a mission and a community and a fellowship and like this whole good versus evil. And I mean, I can go on and on about that. We'll maybe get into it later, but just as an intro. And I think a huge theme in the book for me is hope. And actually like continuing to go forward even when you don't feel hope or things seem hopeless. And obviously Sam Gamgee's amazing quote at the end of Two Towers about, you know, there still being good in this world that's worth fighting for. I relate that to the Christian journey for sure.
Yeah. I think that I love that you point that out within here, and we can maybe like jump into that for a second of this, because I think we don't always associate hope within spirituality unless you're like in a specific, faith space, because you have scripture of faith, hope, and love. But the idea of how to have hope in these really complex situations, it really is such a big theme within the whole entire time, the whole entire journey of them, of how do you keep going when it just seems like it's completely pointless.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think I would second that, because I wrote a bunch of things about like, well, what is a spiritual message here? I think hope really does like center on that. Because my favorite character is Elrond, like period. Just
say
he's
more.
like the meeting. Well, he's the meeting point of all of these, not all, but several of the different races in Middle Earth, of elves and humans, and even some Maya, if you go far enough back in the Silmarillion, far enough back in his genealogy. And also his life was hard. And I think you like get a taste of that when, Arwen is going to become human, and that's really sad. But, what you don't get from the movies is that also his twin became human, and that is how he's related to Aragorn. He's like uncle 80,000 times removed, but he's stayed so close to the children of his brother, and had to, like, as an elf who chose immortality, who chose the life of an elf, where his brother chose to be human as a half elf and half human. There's loss there that's almost unimaginable, like knowing I'm not going to see you again, actually. This is it. What we did together is it. And then also, we don't see his wife in the story because of the violence that was done to her and how she had to leave Middle Earth just to recover. And he does get to see her again, but there's still many years of loss. And even going back to the story of his parents, which actually Nick can probably give you more detail on that. But Elrond is just a figure in Lord of the Rings who has experienced so much loss as someone who is a part of a race who shouldn't have experienced that much loss, right? Like they who really shouldn't have had those experiences. And his level of hope, his level of commitment to do good, his care for everyone around him, no matter what race they are, is just so inspiring to me. And so I take a lot from his story.
Man, you've given me such a new love for Elrond. Gosh. I do have to say, I love how they're portraying him in the Rings of Power, because I feel like they're allowing a completely different side of him to be seen than in the books, than in the movies that were. Because in the movies, he's so serious. He's just like, in the movies of Lord of the Rings, he's so serious. And you see a little bit of humor come through, but not very much. And you see a younger, kind of different side of him. But you also learn some of his story. Like they talk so much more, like you're talking about, of his parents and his history and his brother, that is just gone, Yeah, when I think of themes that really stand out so much to our world today, it really is that idea of, like you were saying, Michelle, Sam's whole speech about the great stories is like, you have the hobbits, which they love to hear the stories, but then they're like, oh crap, we're like in the middle of one. And I think that's so much of our world today, where we've heard about crazy stories, and then you get into moments and you're like, oh, now we are here. Or like, how do we, go in this thing of like, how do you have hope through complexities and the things that come forward? So
Yeah, and I think that that's part of the inspiration behind it, right? Is that we don't know when we're in the middle of the story, and the ideal that we will continue to press forward because it might give hope to somebody else later, is such a important thing that we often lose sight of. We might not be in a place where we're going to be ultimately victorious, but we might spur on that next person who is going to be victorious.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of just the importance of those stories that they're pointing out,
Yeah. Or even your victory might not just be for you, because that's like the whole thing
Right.
of Frodo, is he actually doesn't get to enjoy the thing. Did any of you guys read my like little, I'm not offended if you did not, but did you see my Substack article that I wrote about Frodo this past
I
month?
did.
Oh,
I was
no.
very surprised by it.
Yeah, I don't like Frodo at all. I
Yeah.
really struggle to like Frodo. What were you gonna say, Johana-Marie? Go
No,
ahead.
I said I
I'm gonna
didn't
stick
read it,
up
and
for
then
Frodo.
I think I did actually read the first line, and I was like, we're going to have a conversation later. Let me stop this right here. We're going to talk later, so don't let me get held up.
No, yeah, I was at the beach with some friends, and I had brought up to someone that I just don't like Frodo. I feel like he has this hero complex that's really not needed, and he feels like everything is on him, and he can't share the burden with Sam, and it's like really boring to me and annoying to me. And then as I'm explaining some of the things that annoy me in Frodo about like holding burdens and not sharing it with other people, my friend from church who was at the church was like, huh, who does that sound like, Josh? And I was like, call me out. It's my own life. It's my own part of my
I don't
heart.
like Frodo because he's too much like me.
He's too much like me.
So this is going to jump a little bit
Go ahead, jump.
bearing burdens, but what reading that article made me think of was I don't think that it's you don't like Frodo. I think that you don't like what the ring does to him, because I think really what you're describing is his actions because of the ring's influence on him. It makes him more selfish.
Yeah.
It makes him a worse person in general, really. And it's this constant sort of voice in the back of his head, or a pressure. That one thing that I think they do really effectively in the films is there's kind of like a sound, like a pressure sort of sound that happens whenever the ring is influencing a character in a specific way, where you just feel this sudden heaviness sort of come over you, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is just something that's very common in anybody's head, but especially within the queer space of like, there's always this sort of voice that's happening, or pressure that's happening in the
Yes.
back to conform, or telling you a negative when there could be a positive. And maybe not hearing the other voices that are around you, like Sam, of like, I will help you carry this. I am here. I'll do whatever you need me to do. And we're still going, no, it's fine. I'll handle
It's
it.
fine.
Don't worry about it.
Nobody understands me.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I relate to it a lot, even yesterday. So I've been sick the past few days, and I think it was just because this last week was insane. There was like just so much going on, and I'm normally very boundaried on not taking on more than I need to nowadays, but there was just no avoiding it this last week, and I think my body revolted. And I was supposed to preach at church, and it was very hard for me to simply go ahead and ask for people to just take over everything. I think there's a part of it for me that I think what's really hard, especially depending on your Enneagram, I think depending, some things are easier or harder for us, but as an Enneagram 3, there is a challenge to ask for support for two reasons for myself. One is because I I think in my unhealth, in my most unhealthiest part, I find my value in being able to do things. You know, when I'm great, when I'm doing the greatest, I don't. But in my unhealth, I find my value in it. So then the shame can creep in if I'm like letting go and saying I can't do things. But the other part is I actually enjoy it. When you find enjoyment in like, or like purpose in things, you don't want to let that go. Like I was like, I'm so excited. I've actually put a lot of effort into what I'm going to preach today and I want to share it. But at the same time, I can't. And so thankfully having a community around me that I even just me just going, hey, everyone, I'm sick. So I'm going to be struggling a little bit today. I didn't even have to ask. Everyone is just like, okay, we're taking it over. You're fine. Josh, stay home kind of thing. And they can be a lot healthier than me and not asking. But I think we all have those different reasons. And you're right. I do think there's an element of him going like, it's sad because of what it does to him and then where he ends up in it.
Do you
So
think it's true in the story, though, that he was the only one who could carry it? Like it being the ring, it was entrusted to him. It seems like some kind of mystical thing where, because I love that moment on the mountain when Frodo collapses and he can't go any further.
Yeah.
And it's true that like, I guess, well, I don't know. I'm asking, could Sam have taken it himself but what he decides to do is actually just carry Frodo. And he's like, I can't carry the burden, but I can carry you while you're carrying the burden.
Yeah.
And they get there that way. I love, that's the best.
I have thoughts. Either of you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always sort of a predestination almost feeling to a lot of the Lord of the Rings of that is the person who is meant to carry it specifically. But that being said, I do think that another Hobbit could have taken it up. I think the Hobbits are the ideal character within the world to be able to do that or ideal people type within the world to be able to do that because they have no grand designs. They're really the only ones in the culture who are not trying to rule their own real like bit of land or anything like that. They're just kind of concerned with like their local government, maybe at the most, and just relaxing and getting by, enjoying their day, right?
They're gardening.
Yeah, they're gardening. Exactly. Yeah. They aren't trying to build a Gondor. They're not trying to, ride the plains of Rohan, anything like that,
And trying to live forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when Frodo flips out, I think it's the Two Towers when he's like, this is my burden, mine alone. It was entrusted to me. Is he wrong? Do we think that he's actually wrong?
I think he's wrong.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely think Sam could have done it. I think they even could have shared it. I think Sam doesn't offer to take it in that moment because there's almost like trauma around it of people.
He's like a little scared.
Right. He's like, okay, clearly other people tried to steal this, which would undermine the whatever. I'm not going to even try
I'm just here because I was eavesdropping on a conversation and got forced here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Like I would say I do agree with Nick that the books do make it clear there's a reason why Gandalf chooses hobbits. That there is like I think it's when in the books I believe it's actually when Pippin and Gandalf are riding to Gondor. Again, it's been a moment since I've read the books, but there's a conversation they have where like Gandalf is going deeper into why he won't take the ring, and he's explaining that the greater good power can be corrupted that much
Mhm.
greater, as we know. This is why Galadriel shouldn't take it. This is why Gandalf shouldn't take it. Is like there's a goodness in the fact that all they're going to turn in, worst case scenario, they're going to turn into Gollum, which sounds sad.
Yeah.
Like it makes them
Right.
sound expendable, but
Yes.
like worst case scenario, they're going to turn into Gollum. And then second of all, the things that the ring has to offer don't hit them the same way because of what is important for them as a community. And so it's much harder for it to corrupt them. But I do agree. I think that Frodo is wrong because, and Sam does bear the ring for a period.
Mhm.
He does get
Yeah.
Right.
considered a ring bearer.
Yeah.
But I do love that scene because I think the scene, what you're referring to on Mount Doom, where he's like, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you, is the acceptance of Sam accepting, listen, I'm not going to fight you on this anymore, but I know what we have to get done here.
Mhm.
And I've seen that enough with like leaders and organizations in different situations. I've been the recipient of that, where people are like, that's what happened to me on a smaller scale on Sunday. People are like, you don't even have to ask. We're coming along and we're doing this. Like, this is how this is going. And so it feels like that's what Sam is doing in this way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
to enter the world of like criticism of Tolkien, as much as we love
Go.
the world,
Yes.
I do think some of
No.
the reason why Frodo's no, I don't know. I think some of the reason Frodo has the hero complex that you might dislike, Josh, or feel like he's the only one who can carry the burden is even while Gandalf is going to the hobbits because they are positioned the best in this world to carry this burden, he also goes to the most noble of the hobbits, literally the richest
Yeah.
hobbit there. Like if we're gonna do class analysis, like
Yeah.
there's a little noblesse oblige there,
Yeah.
Mhm.
or a little like, okay, like why didn't you go to Sam, who truly is the salt of the earth? And
Yes.
maybe we don't want Sam to bear that burden or be corrupted by the ring, but there is a little bit of that. Like I can see that Tolkien is like a white Englishman born
Totally.
in like or you know what I mean, born in like the
Mhm.
early 20th century, late 19th century, early 20th century. Like that's comes through, and I don't hate it. I grew up with it. There's some parts of it that I love it, but if we're peeking behind the veil, I think it's worth it to say, oh, I noticed this. I noticed that even as you're going to the lowliest, it can't be the actual lowly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's still an elite within the hobbits.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah. And would you, Johanna, would you say the same for the Hobbit as well? Because he picks Bilbo first for the dwarves. Would you say maybe that's why he picked him for the dwarves?
I think so. I mean, if hobbits don't have princes, but if they did, that would have been Bilbo. Like
Mhm.
he's the
Yeah.
richest, he's the wealthiest, he's the most worldly, has the most worldly mindset. Like there's, I don't know, thinking politically, there's reasons why you want people who are the least parochial, perhaps, who have the wealth to travel, to read,
Mhm.
to spend leisure time thinking and imagining and writing, to lead. But there's also problems in that always, you know what I mean? And that being like one class
Yeah.
of person, not necessarily people who have that inclination. Because Sam might have had that inclination if he had that opportunity, but his dad's a gardener. And his dad is Bilbo's gardener, and now he's Frodo's gardener. And like there's like nobility there, and it's honored. It is honored. Like we can't pretend that Sam is not basically the second. I feel like the second main character
Master
of the book.
Frodo. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like that, as a black girl in the South, hearing master, whatever, it's just like, again, I read the classics, I grew up on them, I have
Yeah.
the context for it, but it still hits.
Yeah.
Oh.
So then diving into more of this criticism of Tolkien, or like just in general, the complexities, because Tolkien was written like Tolkien is a product of his time and just then his situation and things. Obviously, there's I think the race conversation of Tolkien blew up with Rings of Power and how they handled it in all of these different areas. But also, it was kind of, Michelle, you referenced it before. There actually, technically, unless you believe the Gimli theory, there is no woman in the Fellowship, and there's only 2 female characters in all of Lord of the Rings, none in The Hobbit. So,
Yeah.
especially on the gender one, I would really love to hear, Michelle and Johana-Marie, how do you feel about how Tolkien deals with gender?
Given his like the context that he is coming from, I can forgive the lopsided representation. I mean, the Fellowship of the Ring essentially was like a parallel to his war comrades.
Yeah.
And I will say that, you know, there are a few women, but they are portrayed as strong women.
Mhm.
And, you know, Eowyn saying, "I fear a cage." And I think Tolkien agreed with that. Like he didn't think women should be caged up. Like he thought they could accomplish big things, but there's still an element of like they are the symbol of beauty and femininity and but I don't know, what do you think, Johanna?
I think first, I'm like, I wish people now, like, if you're not sure that you can portray women well, I honestly would rather more of a Tolkien approach where there's few, but the few that are like, honestly, some of like the women's representation in
badass.
fantasy
Hmm.
after
Yeah.
after him for
Mhm.
a long time, it's really poor. It's really
Yeah.
overly sexualized. It's really
Yeah.
paper thin. It's really so even as a trailblazer where people are realizing, oh, or I feel like everyone's living in the world like this is a boys' game. We're writing boys' stories of adventure, whatever, blah blah blah. I think he was still setting an example that a lot of writers were not able to follow,
Mhm.
Yeah.
even in the few women. Um,
Mhm.
and I think as a teenager reading this, I don't know, it's interesting because I first started reading it because of a crush I had on a friend's older brother. And he was like, "Oh, you like fantasy? You should read this." And I was like, "I will."
Okay.
Okay.
You don't have to tell me twice. um, and that same friend, we went to actually see the first movies together. And there was another crush on another friend who was my best friend, who we were like, Galadriel's speech, we're reading this to each other, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't notice because the women were already so strong as characters and so admirable and so archetypical in a way that I hadn't seen in a lot of the other fantasy I read. I when I first read it, I didn't notice because it was just so good. What was there was so good.
Yeah.
As you get older, you're like, oh, okay, well, this is I can be either Galadriel or I can be Eowyn, and technically none of these are
Yeah.
actually me because of other other socio-political constructions of life or whatever. But I don't know. It's one of those where it's like, I don't hate it. Like it is what it is.
Mhm.
And what he did have on the page was such that I felt honored as a woman in the text in the way that sometimes, again, other writers, I didn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's I don't want to excuse it as like, that was just the time, but I can also honestly say we're still trying to recover that level of honor in a lot of fantasy.
Yeah.
Especially fantasy written
Hmm.
not by women.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you gonna say
Um,
something, Nick?
Yeah, so one thing that I think is interesting, and I can't like confirm that this is actually how he felt or not, is I do think that he maybe started to feel a little guilty about not including women as much towards the end of his life, especially because all of a sudden, he starts inserting Galadriel into all these stories that she wasn't in
Everywhere.
before. Right,
Mhm,
exactly.
mhm.
And, the story of Arwen and Aragorn, like, he's working on essentially mathing out, like, how could we have Aragorn and Arwen both be roughly the same age, just in their presentation, and just really starting to think more and more about women and their roles within the universe, but never really got too far into it because I think he started to think about it really too late in life. So
Yeah,
I just
Yeah.
think that's a fascinating
Yeah.
turn that took.
I
yeah.
don't know how much you guys have ever studied like the evolution of Lord of the Rings, like in his writing, but there was a draft where Tolkien actually meant for for Eowyn and Aragorn to end up together.
Yeah.
There was a period, and I actually love that doesn't happen. Like she
Mhm.
obviously still is drawn to him, but the reality of, and I know then she ends up going with
Faramir.
Faramir.
Faramir, but like I think that there is a beauty of especially she goes to the plains of Minas Tirith as this in this kind of understanding of like this love is that I was pursuing is gone, and it's not, that's not what drives her there, but yeah, Galadriel, I do agree with you, Nick. Galadriel is one of the most fascinating like characters that Tolkien like puts everywhere, and you almost forget she's married, kind of thing, like, which I
Yes.
kind of love.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
she has a husband.
Like, oh yeah, Celeborn, who is he?
I mean, Rings of
Totally
Power, I
arm
still
candy.
don't know where he's at. It's like
Yeah.
so insane.
He said, I am a
And-
trophy husband. I don't know what you want from me.
Exactly.
Well, and there's also like multiple, if you read the actual timeline of like Middle Earth, there's like hundreds of years where it's like Galadriel just decided to go over here in a completely different part of like the map, like from Celeborn for like a long time. And I love she's just like, bye. I will see you later. We're living
I have
forever.
things to
some of
do.
us
Yeah.
Okay, so then kind
Mm.
of going into more of the queer stuff. We talked about Frodo and Sam and just the queer. Let's dive into like this queer readings of not just their friendship, but of characters in general. We were like, is this intentional? Like, how much of this is just like a difference of culture and stuff? But I don't know how, if you guys remember, there was a moment where Ian McKellen was saying like, if I had been the director of Lord of the Rings, I would have made them queer. And that also just feels like impeding on the, I don't know, I always struggle with that of like, how much do we read into this and how much do we just allow for it to be as it is? So yeah, how do you feel about queer readings of Tolkien and these friendships and relationships?
I mean, I live in the queer fan space. That is
You
so.
do.
That's all.
That
That's
is
all
true.
we do over here.
You
But
are
I think
here for it.
I am here for it. But I also think that there's like like to me, the pinnacle of fan art, fan fiction, any type of fan engagement is bringing your interpretation forward that actually works with what the text is, not in
Yeah.
rewriting the text, but truly like diving into the open spaces. To be honest, if we're gonna read really deeply into it,
Yeah.
if Frodo is not a side B character, I don't know who is. In love with his straight best friend, who also loves him. If I were gay, we would be together, but I'm genuinely not. Sorry, Rosie's back home. We're gonna literally have babies. But also, I'm gonna join you in Valinor later. So I don't know. It feels very much like if at least
Yeah.
one of these people isn't straight here, and it's probably Frodo, and he's
It's probably
very
Frodo.
quietly holding it in his heart, and is I don't want to say rewarded for it because that feels like I don't know. I think there are complications around reward for suffering. I think there's ways that's both appropriate and ways that's both used to like almost like control people or not give them what they need in life. But in some ways there is this final like coming together of our eternity is spent together in
Mhm.
friendship but in friendship together. And I don't know, that feels really particularly side B Christian, celibate queer Christian
Yeah.
coded to
Yeah.
me.
It's almost kind of like you can have queer readings and it not need to mean that the characters had a sexual relationship. Kind of
Yeah.
like what you're saying, which I could totally see. Like the reading of Frodo being gay, you know, and this kind of longing for a relationship with Sam. I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. In a very deep way of this relationship.
I was thinking, like, I don't, like you said, Josh, I don't need them to be queer.
Yeah.
I think that in our side B world, we are really trying to reclaim, like, the beauty and power of friendship. And if you superimpose, like, a sexual queer relationship onto them, I think it takes away from that.
Yeah.
I
It
do
almost could
think it's
make it inaccessible for straight people to see themselves in that realm too.
yeah,
right?
yeah. You know, there is like the scene where they are jumping on the bed, like tickling each other because they're so happy to see each other again, and that was interesting choice of direction. And I could
Like,
see like
give me a straight explanation for this, please.
but I think like I think it actually supports the narrative that we are trying to live in, which is like that kind of like unbridled love and affection for your friends.
Yeah.
Is beautiful. And I do think it's interesting to think of like one of them as queer. And I actually was picturing Sam, like, even though he
I can see
had a
it.
girl, that doesn't mean anything.
There we go.
True.
Bisexuality.
Because I see a bit of myself in Sam where, especially when I was younger and I didn't understand my queerness yet, I feel like I expressed it in being like a really devoted friend. And I see Sam doing that.
Yeah.
And it might, you know, it doesn't have to be this explicit queerness. It's just like there's this love between people that's expressed chastely through devotion. And again, I think it goes back to what both like Tolkien experienced in the war with his brothers, his soldiers. And you know, and there's definitely accounts of like homosexuality in war times. Like it's possible that he like witnessed it. But I do know that both he and C.S. Lewis like spoke pretty respectfully about homosexuality, like, and people that they knew, and I'm sure that they witnessed it in the army. So if there's any possibility of like a queer reading of Sam and Frodo, I actually think that Tolkien like honors them.
Yeah.
By showing us a possibility of like a really beautiful, devoted friendship.
Yeah, there's an intimacy. I'm even just thinking about the scene when they're at the Grey Havens and Sam, you know, Frodo's leaving, and just the way that you see how heartbroken Sam is at his leaving. There is an intimacy they share that just even, you know, that Sam doesn't share with his wife, you know? And I do think there is a way of what we connect to it. I regardless of whether it's seen as queer or not, as queer people, we have access to that kind of, to reading into that queer intimacy that I think often straight people feel a block from even reading or seeing. Nick, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Michelle, I think I fall more with you of like I don't necessarily think that we need to force that narrative onto them. And I think actually a lot of it has to do with the specific language that they use with each other of the master and servant
Hmm.
idea. Um, it, I was I read a book kind of recently that pointed me in a different direction than I had thought of before, which thank God for this was it's a biblical direction. Specifically, they pointed to John 15:15, which
Hmm.
in which Jesus uses a master servant um, language with himself and with the um, apostles, right?
Mm.
So he is um freeing the apostles really of that language in that, but I kind of think that this is the relationship more of Sam and Frodo, is that Frodo is more of a Jesus, and Sam is his John, right? He is the one for Jesus, that who is brought into the innermost circle, right, of all of the other apostles. So I tend to think of it more nowadays in as that sort of relationship is what's happening there. And I also try to look at, as we're saying, just the bigger story outside of what we see just in the Lord of the Rings, of their relationship, where they didn't really have anything beforehand. And then
Yeah.
afterwards, Sam does go to Rosie and Frodo goes to the Grey Havens, but Sam stays behind. And then Sam eventually does go to the Grey Havens, but it says that he's allowed to go there because he was the final ring bearer who was left, right? It's not because he's going to
Mm.
join Frodo specifically, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think I tend to see maybe a little bit more of a queer relationship really with um, Legolas and Gimli, because
Yeah.
Hmm.
they, I mean, they start off as like frenemies essentially, right? But they are bound together for life, for the whole rest of their story. Everything that they do is together after that, and they even go to the Grey Havens together
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the end. So I think that's where I feel it the strongest, especially from Legolas,
Legolas is so
because
gay.
yeah, he's got to be, right.
It's
You
true.
He's
gotta
It's
be.
so
true.
beautiful.
It's true.
Yeah, and also he's
Maybe
just
that's sorry, continue.
yeah, he seems to be the only elf that doesn't have any partner of any kind.
They're all
Um,
dead.
yeah, ever spoken about. He doesn't have kids later, and nothing happens with him essentially.
Yeah.
Relationally.
Maybe
Was
that's
his
like, have you
interest in the Hobbit
go ahead.
movies, was that like written in for the movie? Because
That
he
was written
seemed to
in.
Was.
be, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
it was,
yeah,
and that's a whole interesting mess to talk about that we don't have to be included as part of this. But man,
yeah,
that's a
I
okay.
know.
crazy story.
Yeah. Have you guys heard so the scene that you were referring to, Michelle, where they're jumping on the bed and tickling each other and all that stuff? Have you guys I know you guys have, so I don't have to, but for other people, anyone listening that hasn't heard of it, there's a whole thing where as people enter the room, Frodo says the names of everyone, but he doesn't say Legolas's name. It's the only character that he doesn't
Oh,
say. And the question is, does he know his name? Have they ever
'Cause
spoken?
does he? Yes, I have seen that. People are like going through the
I
movie,
never
like, do
noticed
they
that.
ever even talk to each other? This
Or
whole time.
now I'm wondering, is it gay, like, is that the gay anger, gay jealousy, velvet rage
Like,
kind of thing?
right,
Like, I
right.
see you.
there can only be one.
There can only
Yeah,
be one.
It's me or you.
that's amazing.
Yeah. No, I think regardless of whether we're reading on any of them, I do think there is something beautiful about these deep friendships, like Legolas and Gimli, like Frodo and Sam, Merry and Pippin,
Jonathan and
all of,
David, like it's all there.
yeah,
Mhm.
all of
Yeah.
this. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not very like fantasy literate. Johana-Marie, I feel like you're probably the most fantasy literate out of all of us, maybe. But like, that's not that kind of deep friendship that isn't automatically like labeled queer. We don't see that a lot later on in fantasy.
No, I feel like people hint at it, but they don't take the time to build it. Like they'll
like he
say
did.
these characters are best friends and they're brothers in arms, or so you know what I
Yeah.
mean, those kinds of things, but they don't show it the way
Yeah.
Tolkien took the time to actually parse it out to let you see how this brotherhood really evolves in the
Yeah.
in the midst of trial. Um
Yeah. Totally.
so I think mostly I think that's partly because I mean most people aren't taking like a decade plus to write their books except George R.R. Martin.
Which he doesn't have any
Uh,
positive relationships, honestly.
right, like,
Yeah.
and he's like
Yeah.
the anti-Tolkien. He's purposefully doing
Yes.
Anti-Tolkien, which I
Everything
think,
different. Yeah.
Yes.
which I get because Tolkien. I was actually just watching before we even talked about this on a drive to Jacksonville. I was watching discussion between fantasy writers about basically the mountain of Tolkien, the mountain of Lord of the Rings, what it has been, what is their relationship to this heavyweight text that truly changed all of fantasy for decades later. And so there's a reason he's the anti-Tolkien. It's like you almost had to like break
To
free of
break out of the box.
to break out of the box.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because Brandon Sanderson was on this panel and he was talking about how he would see the writer N.K. Jemisin as actually more responding to Dune than to Tolkien by the time they come along. There's been enough space created by folks like George R.R. Martin and the anti-Tolkiens to like breathe, and they can really be like progeny of other tech. You can do epic high
Yeah.
fantasy and it actually be
Mhm.
pulling more from a different text than this. But no one takes time the way Tolkien does to develop the story, and that sucks
Yeah.
because we need it.
And I actually would say, I think that's one thing I've been, on the episode that's coming out before this, we were talking about how I think that's so reflective of community, because I had my friend Rachel on and we were just talking about our community here. And one of the hardest things is we long for deep community, but we don't realize the time it takes. We
Mhm.
don't realize that the relationships of Frodo and Sam and Merry and Pippin and all these aren't things you develop, in a moment. They can be forged in trauma or time. You like forge them in trauma or time, one of the two, or both. But like maybe trauma over time. But that there is a deepness of, we don't just jump into it. And I think that's what's really hard for our culture in it, that we long for it, but it takes the time that Tolkien took to develop it in the text, but also these characters of developing it in their own lives, which is like really, really challenging within our current circumstances. I truly am beginning to believe more and more that like marriage and sexual relationships are not the most challenging aspect of sexuality for us. It's friendship. Like friendship is the most challenging aspect of sexuality in our world today, because we just don't do it at that
Yeah.
level. So
Yeah, you're absolutely
It's
right.
really good.
Yeah.
all right, because we've already hit we had so many different questions, and maybe like we need to come back on and do like a extra thing on it, but for time's sake, I want to close with asking you guys what character's journey feels most like your own spiritual journey, and why.
I can say for myself, it's going to be Frodo, which I feel like is the very obvious answer for most fans. And my chain broke, but usually I wear the ring.
Okay.
And so I can't show it right now. I've got a new one on the way. But I wear that because I feel like a lot of Christians wear the cross, and this is not meant to replace the cross, but it's just like the story that reminds me the most of Jesus's burdens and the burden that he carried. And I don't know. I think that I spent so much of my life just really struggling with depression in my younger years, and that really felt like that ring. Like I really understood that weight that was being carried, and it was really, only the salvation of Christ that was able to bring me out of that. And so I relate just hugely with Frodo on that weight side of things.
100%.
I love it because I also, in my past, have carried a ring, a fake. It had the inscription on it and everything.
Mm-hmm.
As a kind of metaphor, I think it's a metaphor for like cross-bearing
Yeah.
in the book, and we can see ourselves in that. I already shared a little bit how I saw myself in Sam, but I'm like it's like a mix of Sam and Frodo, because Frodo's like the darker side of it. So he says early on in the story, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish that this had not happened in my lifetime. And I have been guilty of wishing that. Even like specifically about my sexuality. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I wish this wasn't my life. I wish I wasn't the topic of like these culture wars right now or whatever. I didn't have to deal with this personally. I think Frodo's an Enneagram 4. I'm just going to say that.
Without a doubt.
Okay.
And
Wow.
we tend towards like that, self victim, like, oh, I have to carry my cross. And, but like Nick said, it's a symbol of like, I feel inspired by the story about him and really all the characters, like, who just continue to keep going. And Sam even says when he's giving that monologue, like, the people in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. And so I see myself a little bit in both of those characters.
Yeah.
I think so. I haven't even really mentioned Eowyn and Faramir, but between the two of those, I think I see my journey the clearest. Both, I think, experiencing some form of like either loss or familial rejection, and being very isolated, just being incredibly, incredibly isolated the whole time. And that really was, I think, for much of my early like Christian life and much of my just early life period, just feeling alone, isolated, no friends. You're kind of fending for yourself, and really both alone and longing for something greater. A more, reading the stories, reading the myths, reading the fables, and being like, there's something there for me, and I don't know what it is, but I'm by myself. I don't have anyone who understands me, and I cannot reach the greatness that I think is there. And I feel like both Eowyn and Faramir have that experience of like living through that, but also, and even being like Eowyn being rejected by Aragorn, which is like, I do identify with that, girl. I know. I'm sorry. It hurt. It do be hurting. It do be hurting. But still not being like waylaid by those experiences, really seeing purpose very clearly, really seeing right and wrong very clearly, and being strengthened in community. Like the further they go into this very isolating journey, actually finding the community, not just themselves finding each other, but finding the friendships, finding the hobbits, finding even Aragorn, who honors Eowyn when no one else really sees her the way she sees herself. He does see her and affirms that, even as he's like, I can't actually give you what you want, but I see you, I honor you. And really the Lord like delivering on that deep longing for friendship, community. Like actually I wrote when we first started talking, like, Lord of the Rings as a community building tool, because that's been the, like
oh no
oh no I'm still here.
Back. Okay.
I disappeared for a second. I don't know what happened. But
so you said you wrote down Lord of the Rings as a community building tool.
Yeah, because how it's brought all of even us here together and built these
Yes.
friendships, and so much of my friendships in life have been built around being like Lord of the Rings,
Yep.
fantasy,
Yes.
Ren
Lord of the
Fair,
Rings.
and this really inspired, and seeing even in the text itself how this pursuit of right and righteousness builds community out of people in the midst of
100%.
dire circumstances.
And it
I
ties
feel
them
like that's
together. Like,
Yeah.
after the fellowship breaks up, Gimli says, like, our fellowship has failed. And then Aragorn says, not if we hold true to each other.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And
I love
I
that.
read, sorry, this just reminds me of, I read this really great quote that was analyzing the friendships in Lord of the Rings that said the common goal cannot be achieved without community, and community cannot be achieved without the common goal. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, if that isn't the
Amen.
fellowship in a nutshell, I don't know what is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So good.
Well, and that's so true, because that's the reality of like what I think is so challenging about community is you have to have people pursuing a similar vision. It doesn't have to be all
Yes.
at, you don't have to all be the same person. You don't all necessarily have to have the exact same vision, but deep down, you have to have a similar vision somewhere you're going towards, because it will always require multiple people walking the same path and
Yeah.
deciding to walk the same path. And I think that's
Yes.
what's so challenging, is because I do think there's steps that if I as an individual want to take towards community, I can. But long term, it has to involve finding those other people that see it
Yeah.
or can grasp it and then decide to walk along as well. You know? Because in some ways, that's Merry and Pippin. They weren't there like deciding we're
Yes.
going with you. They were like, well, like, especially in the books, they're like, we thought we were helping you move, but like, okay.
Worst moving day ever.
Ever.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, like, once they sense that Frodo is up to something, they're like, well, we're not letting you do it alone. Duh.
Alone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, well, this is fun. I was going to say, actually, for my characters of spiritual journeys, Johana-Marie, you actually hit it, because I was going to say Faramir and Eowyn for such similar reasons. So I don't even need to go into that, because I do see the things I will say is, like you said, with Faramir, the familial rejection and how he processes that, I think for me has been huge. And then the Eowyn's just her trying to figure herself out and like being forced into a certain box and like trying to like find a way forward that feels authentic and all of this stuff, I think is, I've always really resonated with. I could watch her killing the Witch King a billion times and I'll cry each time she
Over and
says,
over.
I am no man.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So good. I actually do love in the books then how the entire time you don't even know that it's her until she kills him. Like, I kind of love that, but I
Yeah.
get why the movie did it as it did.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks y'all for doing this. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
we could go for hours and hours.
maybe
Truly.
we can do a
Absolutely.
Patreon episode at some point doing it.
Yes,
Or
please.
something. Yeah.
I'm in.
Okay, done. So you guys, if you loved it, let me know. We can do more. We can do more stuff. We just want to be able, I hope if nothing else you can take from this, that like there's ways that literature, not just Lord of the Rings, but there's ways that literature can really play out. Like if our lives are spirituality and sexuality, we find it everywhere, you know, and how it plays out the themes that both we live by and we aspire to live by. So please listen and subscribe. You can rate and review us wherever you listen, and you can go to holyourselves.org if you're interested in spiritual direction or cohorts. Like I mentioned about the Frodo thing, subscribe to my Substack if you want to get monthly newsletters, and you can go to Patreon for more content, both my monthly solo episodes, and I do quarterly episodes where I might have other people back on and stuff. So go there. Thanks as always to the Transient Friends for our theme song, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye, everyone.
Love you all.
Love you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.